So you're going to start by importing, selecting from your camera. All of these should be actually lit up because there'll be new photos. You can just normally start import. Once you get the hard drive, because you'll run out of space on your computer, you're going to want to change the location up here. So you're going to select the actual photos. One of the most important things, which will be easier to see in daytime photos, is which ones are in focus. So all your photos will import to the library. You'll click on develop, and you can see right here all the photos you've taken on the bottom. Normally this will be present. I like to hide this so you can focus more on it, but all the photos you've taken. Now the big thing is you want to make sure everything is in focus, or at least the parts that you want. So like this is a done one, but more of the car was in focus, the barrels are showing. You can still sort of see the bride, the banner, the hood, and so on and so forth. So you're going to want to pick a photo. We'll just do this one for reference. We'll do this one. And when you start, over here is where you edit with everything, all the way down to the bottom. Lens corrections, if you start using alternative lenses. I use the box here, distortion so you can see how it affects the car. And based on the setting and how you want the mood to look, you do the vignetting, which is how most of this all goes. If you're not sure what something does, just max it out and min it out so you can always see the extremes. R on your keyboard will be for rotations. So make sure your photo is straight, your car is straight, everything's in a perfect line. Now you'll push over here in the detail, sharpening and masking. Hold the Alt key, and you'll want to mask till your car looks smooth, not overdone. A little grainy, nothing crazy. And then you normally just move up the details, and you can kind of see in this little box how everything will crisp up. And for noise reduction, that would be more for nighttime or darker photos, which we'll show in the darker photo one. You can come up to the top here where it says WB, that's your white balance. So as shot, auto, daylight, cloudy, if you want a good basis for where you are. And from here you can normally adjust in small increments for the feel of the actual photo. I like to bring the shadows up, the whites and the highlights up, and darken the blacks, because as you can see, it gets more dramatic. Clarity and dehaze I never go past +10 because it just starts to get a little excessive. Same with saturation, nothing too crazy. The tone curve you can do quite a bit with, but you're going to want to look further into how to actually use that. Now you can come over here to the HSL color. You have hue, saturation, illumination, and all of them. I like to focus on the color first, so you kind of bring the reds in. As you can see, I like to add a little bit more color to it. You can alter the hue of it, play around with that if you wanted to do something creative, or if you're trying to eliminate colors such as the orange and the yellow in the photo. Oh, sorry. You can tweak those colors to blend more to them. So like the magenta and red, turn them in so they're a richer red. And you can also pull out the yellow, put in the yellow. You can change the tint so it's more of a blue, more of a warmer feel. You find that balance. I enjoy warmer, so now you'll push M on your keyboard, which will be a gradient filter. You can drag it up. This easy one is from the bottom to the bottom of the actual car. Turn your exposure down some, dehaze up some, maybe even darken some shadows. And you do the same thing again to the top, where you can darken the sky so you can actually see it, or you can overexpose it so it looks overpowering. You can turn up highlights, turn them down. It's whatever you feel like with the photo. These buttons right here allow you to change between before and after so you can see. And that'll help. Just basics for daylight ones. So now for the nighttime ones that you just took, you kind of go through your library, you can see, point and click, decide which ones you like. You're going to want to do the same thing where you want to make sure most of the car is in focus, or at least what you want is in focus. Make sure there's no weird shadows, make sure there's no weird haze or grain. And you can straighten out your photo. That's still crooked. Go down and, as you can see, you can brighten, darken, whatever your feeling is for that. Mask off the car as best as you can. Add some detail. Now you're going to want to do the noise reduction. So you're going to add some luminance. It's going to kind of smooth out the photo. As you can see, not to that degree. But before you add more pixels, kind of smooths it out. You can add a little contrast in there to help ease into it. Now normally this happens a lot where people will shoot and they get a lot of purple reflections in there. Just pull all the purple out. Don't leave it in there. Be mindful of that on the wheels, on chrome reflections and things like that. You can adjust the hues so that way reds are reds, actual colors are actual colors, but that green on the wheel is actually pretty annoying. I'm not going to deal with that right now. Expose it up a little bit more, depending on how you want the photo to look. This is all where you decide what you like. Shooting a black car at night isn't exactly the easiest and most fun, but they can still be pretty interesting. And now probably crop out that whole section. Same thing, push M on your keyboard, slide it up, and you can add some cool darkening effects. Add in so it looks like you got a little overexposed up top. Light leaking over. Or you can go the opposite way, where you darken it up from the top. Add more shadows to it. Trying to add more effect and kind of a cool edgy vibe to some photos. And then same thing with some of your other ones that you look at. You know, make sure what you want is in focus. It's got enough light in there to see. You'll go down, add your corrections, add vignette, darken it, whatever you feel better. Sharpen up the photo, add some detail, add some illumination or luminance and contrast to kind of smooth out the colors. That way you can see it's a nice glossy paint. Exposure and contrast, nothing too crazy. You don't want to always blow it up. You don't also want to always rely on bumping up the exposure in post. Just subtle changes. Same with like the highlights, shadows and whites. You want to try and get as good of raw shots as you can versus trying to always fix it in post. If you have little spots like this, Q will bring up a cloning sequence. You can try to clone it out of there so it's a little less obvious. And then same thing, M on your keyboard, bring it up. You can darken it to add that dramatic effect. You can kind of add a little bit more exposure up top. If you wanted to, you could accent the wheels and highlights. You could darken and nitpick. The nice thing about the Q is if you really want to get detailed, you can clone out all of these little light reflections, but at the same time it also kind of makes it a night photo, having all of these little dots. So it's a personal preference, but you can see the difference. Sometimes it looks better, sometimes it doesn't.